Hello and welcome to Jessie Book Club. Today we are talking about Shattered Dreams, My Life as a Polygamist Wife by Irene Spencer. I was interested in reading this book because I had just finished His Favourite Wife, which was written by Irene's sister wife, Susan. Irene was a standout character in His Favourite Wife and much older than Susan, so I was extremely interested when I found out she had her very own book. As soon as I started the book, I found out that Irene and Charlotte were half-sisters. They had the same father, and their mothers were also sisters, so they were half-sisters and cousins. Kinda mind-blowing. And I also thought it was really strange this was never brought up in His Favourite Wife, because Irene and Charlotte seemed to hate each other cordially. Irene's childhood was an odd one, as she grew up in the 1940s, when polygamist factions were starting to form, and her father even went to jail for polygamy for a while. While he was in jail, Irene's mother left him. So Irene was not a typical polygamist child, even if her uncle was Rulon Allred, the prophet of the AUB. Irene was shuttled back and forwards between her mother and her aunt most of her teenage life. I found it odd Irene as a teenager had lots of chances to escape polygamy because her mother had done so. Irene even had a non-religious boyfriend called Glenn, who her mother wanted her to marry, but her extended family manipulated her out of marrying Glenn, using her childhood indoctrination to the religion, which was extremely shameful. I think Irene's hatred of her stepfather and her mother's rejection of polygamy more than anything drove her into the arms of Verlin, LeBaron and polygamy. It was a strange type of teenage rebellion. I also felt like Charlotte, Verlin's first wife and Irene's half-sister, wanted Irene to marry Verlin more than either of them did. I found it very interesting. Verlin wanted to have Lucy as his second wife, but Lucy refused, claiming she was meant to be his third. I also found it interesting that Verlin never actually proposed to Irene. He just assumed by her actions that she consented, even though her actions had been manipulated. It is all very sad. Verlin LeBaron never hides the fact he is controlling. He even insists that Irene wears exactly the same outfit as Charlotte on her wedding. The exact same clothes. I wanted to scream, it was so messed up. And then, only an hour or so after their wedding, Verlin calls Irene his key to exaltation. I wanted to cry. Verlin sees this smart, lovely young woman as nothing more than a key. His key. To be completely honest, the only thing Irene and Verlin seem to have in common is that they find each other physically attractive, and they both believe in polygamy. Verlin never seems to ask Irene anything about herself, and continually preaches at her, which annoys her and me. Irene goes into a lot of detail describing polygamist history in the 1950s, which I really enjoyed reading about because I hadn't read anything on the subject before. I especially liked her detail describing the 1953 raid. Trying to escape prosecution, Verlin and Charlotte move to Mexico, and Irene soon joins them. But she is depressed by the dirt floor poverty, and Verlin's insane older sister who is locked up in a shed, and his erratic half-mad brother Florin, who has all his family parade around naked, more than once, and believes they're all going to be teleported by aliens. I can't help wondering whether Verlin is a little mad himself. He seems quite manic at times, and is always having new ideas that seem to suck up all his energy and attention. Verlin also will not touch Irene sexually, and she is depressed. He doesn't like her, and as a reader I also cannot help but wonder this. Verlin seems to be totally obsessed with himself, and Charlotte will not talk to Irene at all if she can help it, because she is suffering from insane jealousy, which of course any normal woman would be. Verlin gets Charlotte pregnant again, but refuses to have sex with Irene more than once a month, and is now openly courting Lucy, which is nearly driving Irene mad with jealousy. They are dirt floor poor when Irene becomes pregnant, and she has no maternity clothes whatsoever, and she ends up having to borrow a pair of Lucy's mother's silk bloomers to wear. Irene is completely mortified by this, and when she goes for her one and only checkup with the doctor, she starts to cry as soon as the doctor sees that her slip and bra are made out of old flour sacks. Irene's pregnancy doesn't have a happy ending. Her baby girl Leah dies minutes after birth. Irene endures all of this in Mexico, unable to speak Spanish and far away from her mother, and she is only 17. Soon after this horrific incident, Irene has to have her appendix removed, and Verlin leaves her alone in a Mexican hospital, where she cannot communicate with the staff. Within a few months of her baby's death and her operation, Irene is pregnant again, and by the time she is 4 months gone, to her horror and grave upset, Verlin is marrying Lucy Spencer, and Irene finds it incredibly hard to deal with. She cries continually, locks herself in her room, screams at Verlin, and thrashes about wildly, and I actually don't blame her. She is 18 and pregnant with her second baby, and her husband is in the next room shagging another woman and getting her pregnant as well. I think I would have done much worse than simply thrash about on the bed. The worst part is Verlin arranges to have Lucy sleep in Irene's bed with her, as they only have a 3-room house, when Verlin has his nights with Charlotte, and it makes me feel sick. I am surprised Irene didn't strangle Lucy in her sleep. Verlin's mother helps them all out financially, and they soon all have their own homes, but Irene is still really jealous of Lucy, especially because Lucy gives Verlin his second son, whereas Irene has another girl. Irene is convinced Verlin favors Lucy, which I agree with. Verlin wanted Lucy, whereas Irene was given to him to keep her away from another man who wasn't a polygamist. Irene's jealousy and anger make her act childishly, calling Lucy Big Nose and throwing rocks at her front door, and I don't blame her, to be honest. Irene is still a teenager, and she loves her man, even if he is a 2-timing skunk. At 20, with 2 babies, Irene asks for a divorce because she and Verlin have only had sex 7 times in 4 years. But, using scripture, Irene convinces Verlin they should bang more often, and that seems to make her much happier. Joel, Verlin's brother, announces around this time that he is a prophet of God, and forms his own church. All his brothers join, and they start about convincing Americans to move to Mexico, and people actually do, which I find insane. The LeBaron ranch becomes colonial LeBaron. It is at this time that Verlin starts working in America, and only visiting home every few months. This actually seems to help Irene and Verlin's relationship, as she lives for the few precious moments she can snatch with him between work and childcare, and other wives. Verlin being away also seems to lessen the jealousy among the wives. Irene is also very personable, and makes friends easily with the new colony members. She is living almost like a single parent, and she seems much happier this way. At 21, after having her 4th baby, Irene falls in love with the hired help, a young man called Aureliano. While Verlin is working away for months at a time in the States, Aureliano treats Irene like a woman. He does the heavy lifting chores around the house and plays with her kids, and he teaches her how to play dominoes, and they do a lot of kissing. Aureliano begs Irene to run away with him and bring her children, but Irene is too afraid of hell, and then Verlin finds out and everything blows up in their faces. Aureliano has to leave. Irene and Aureliano never had sex, but she still loved him, and she never hears from him again. Life goes on though, and Irene and Lucy have a baby a year pretty much for the next 5 or 6 years. Lucy has a horrendous stillbirth, and Irene gets typhoid due to their poor living conditions and nearly dies. Later on, when they move to the mountains, even though their living conditions are a bit better and they have electric, Irene gets German measles while pregnant. Even though they are far from rich, compared to the local people, They have extreme wealth. Irene agrees to adopt a Mexican baby girl, meaning she now has 8 living children. Then Verlin spoils it all by marrying 2 teenage Mexican girls within months of each other, believing he is helping to purify the Mexican race, which is some crazy racist religious belief. These marriages break Irene's heart, but at least she didn't have to attend them, and after the second one she starts feeling numb about the whole thing. This is the end of the first part of this book review. Make sure and subscribe to this channel so you do not miss the next part, which is coming out next week. And leave a comment letting me know your thoughts on this story. And remember to like this video because it really helps out the channel with the algorithm. You can also follow me on Instagram at Lady Jessica Riddell. Until next time, remember, keep sweet!